Started recording anyway.
All right, you're there, Chris.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the True Leadership Show, where we talk all things leadership in the home, in the community, in the workplace, and ourselves. Because if you're true to yourself, you'll be a true leader of others. And we firmly stand by that. We firmly believe that. When I say we, I mean Mike Van Pelt and I, as well as Jim T. Chong, who he's here, but he's not. He's
out in the metaverse.
He's out in the verse, the universe, the metaverse, whatever they call it. I don't know the tech language. So
I don't know.
Anyways, but this is where we get some time to just discuss with everybody, different skills and abilities that leaders are, different perspectives of things that we've learned and experience and knowledge that we've gained. And so this is usually about 20 to 30 minutes chat. We end at 2. So we are very grateful for everybody who hops on and checks us out. Of course, if you're seeing this on Facebook, you can always comment, and we'll get back to you, or you can always reach out to us, which we'll get to that here in a little bit. Well, we just finished up last week. We finished up Leaders Are Servants. Now, if you've been watching, you'd be like, well, leaders are servants. You talked about a bunch of other things. Yes, servant being the main category. Everything we discussed the weeks past have been all those subcategories. So we're kicking off a new full-on category with several descriptors to come and amazing chats to go with it. And so this week, and we're going to speak generically to the definition of this and what we feel is best suited for the talk, with knowing the topics that are to come. What leaders are, ... skilled. Now, I made this a main category because when I looked up, kind of like when I said, what is a leader? And the number just kept growing and growing and growing and going. Skills can cover a lot of things. And so one of the things I wanted to do was look at these descriptors that make up a skilled leader. Some of these, just to give you, a little foreshadowing, playing the video forward here, is leaders are communicators, listeners, receivers, trainers, developers, readers. They're rational. Ooh, that's going to be a fun one to talk about. Leaders are rational, consistent. They're warriors. So many different things that a leader is, but it's a skill. And a lot of people ask me, Chris, is a leader born, or are they trained? And so I tried to divide that up one time, and it didn't work out so well. And I came to a very, very simple conclusion. It's both. It's both. However, it needs to include skills. So leaders are skilled as the main category of what we're going to be talking about. So, Mike, just off the top of your head, or if you looked a few things up prior to this, knowing that I gave these guys the topic, we don't ever rehearse a script for this, other than the fact I gave them the topic, is what does being a skilled leader mean to you? Whether it's any of those descriptors or your own definition, what does that mean to you?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, that's a hard thing to describe because there's so many things that fit into that umbrella. So this is probably a good way to start today, because, when you start thinking about just all the things, I was like pulling up a list. I had to look this up, and I'm like, holy cow, there are like websites and Google sites that are like, here's the 25, here's the 30, here's the 50. And so there's just, so many different skills. But I got to tell you, I circled back to something. I don't know that I'm really going to answer your question. But, several years ago, I had to read this book by Kouzes and Posner, a book called Credibility, How Leaders Gain and Lose It and Why People Demand It. And I got to say, they did years of studying leaderships and why what makes a good leader? Who will people follow? What's the skill or attribute that people will follow in leadership? And year after year after year, when they did this is probably be no shock to anybody, since the name of the book is Credibility. The number one, and I think this is a skill, unfortunately, in this world, but is credibility. Are you honest? Do you have integrity? Are you trustworthy? And if you have that, you have a pretty good chance to have the organization, have the organization in the palm of your hand. But if you don't have that, you have no ground to stand on. And so I circle back to that because I feel like, the baseline of all these skills, and it is, listen, integrity shouldn't be learned, but if integrity was easy, we wouldn't have such thing as Enron or several other companies like that. So,
Well, I'll say this about that, and I wholeheartedly agree. Fact matter, just so everybody knows, and leaders are skilled. The very last one we'll talk about, and it's one of those kind of more save the best for last versus, oh, you didn't think it was that important. No, it's a save the best for last. As actually, leaders are integrous; they have integrity, and we're going to discuss that as a skill because here's the
jumped ahead. I'm kind of an overachiever, so yeah.
Yeah, you are, because Mike didn't know that, guys. Just so you know. But here's the thing: is when I talk skills with people and they get into the debate of is it born, is it taught, is it just automatic, even if it is automatic. This is where leaders or learners become so important, which we will be breaking down and talking about on what's halfway down, so a few weeks ahead, is if you already have a skill, do you just have it and you keep it? Most everybody looks at me as, well, every now and again, I got to kind of brush up. Oh, so you still have to train. You still have to learn. Well, yeah, duh. Okay. So is it born or is it taught? Well, if it is a born skill, I use my 7-year-old quite a bit as an example because there are ways that he is a leader, a born leader. I mean, sure, I could take some credit. My wife could take some credit. Other people in his life could take some credit. But there are just certain things that boy just sees and does. And one of the things I'll give him credit for is last night we're watching this movie on Disney called Dinosaur. And it actually really was a great example of good leadership versus bad leadership. It really was. I was like, how do I put this movie into a training later and make it applicable? And it was my son's quote that did it. So the short end of this movie is these dinosaurs, they experience a catastrophic event, and they've got one guy that's out front, but he's always yelling. He's always, just leave the ones that can't make it, leave the ones that can't survive to their own, He's never helping, he's never guiding, he's never supporting, he's never humble. He's just in charge, so he's the leader. And this other dinosaur comes along. Everybody's like, why are we quoting Disney and dinosaurs? There's a lesson. This other dinosaur comes along, and he is humble, and he is vulnerable, and he is authentic, and he does have integrity that when he says, I'm going to stick by you and I'm going to help you, because some of these other dinosaurs, hey, we're too weak. It's just the way life goes. He's like, no, you're not. You just need help. And so at the end of the movie, I'm going to ruin it for everybody. Sorry. Not sorry. At the end of the movie, the guy that thought he was this leader and boss ends up losing in the long run. He ends up being the one that gets left behind. Not only get left behind, but he ends up dying because of his own stubbornness. You'll notice one thing that doesn't come up as a good thing that leaders are stubborn. Josh was sitting there and he goes, you know what, Dad? I get it. I was just kind of sitting there, I was like, what? I don't what? Like the dinosaurs just died. Like, what is it? Was that like, what death is, unfortunately, but it's the truth. He goes, to be a good leader, you shouldn't be bossy. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, my heart kind of split in two, because on one hand, I wanted to do what Mike did and start laughing, but on the other hand, I was kind of like,
that's great.
Get it, because he can be very bossy, very bossy. He's 7, so okay, to be expected. And even though yes, he's not the firstborn. My firstborn turns 21 this year, so essentially he's the firstborn in the house. And so, thinking about that and thinking about the skills of leaders is, being willing to learn. And there for a minute, I thought, you know what? I'm going to use that as something it's going to happen to be today, and it's going to come up other days. Why? Because I'm continually learning and continually trying to make myself better, because I want my skills to be honed and sharpened to a point, no pun intended with forging or sword making or blade making, anything like that, but to a point that, yes, I know I'm still going to have to continue doing that, but it's going to be for other reasons. I don't want it to be because I got rust on the blade, which can happen. I also don't want to be with a group and be training them and working with them and miss out on a skill that I know is very basic and something that I've known before. And sit back and go, oh, man, guys, I'm going to have to reread that. Now, to be authentic, that has happened. And I've told them, hey, I got to look that back up. Oof, got to brush up on that one. That's okay. But the more that you still work on yourself and the more that you work on the skills and the abilities that you've been given or have been taught, therefore it's both, will allow you to be more effective. Mike, your thoughts on that?
Well, now, you have to be in training all the time. Training never ends. Development never ends. And, Chris, you and I were on a phone call this morning. Listen, I had taken care of some business on Friday and I put it aside and I didn't take action on it when I was done. And this morning I caught myself on it, but it was already too late and I got corrected, right? I got a coaching moment and it's my fault because I didn't take action on something that I knew I needed to get done immediately. Now, this happens to the best of us, right? I help people with that. I coach people on that. And I didn't, wasn't drinking my Kool-Aid at the point, the whole, do it now slogan from some company that I won't say out loud. But that, and the other, so, you gotta take action on things. But, Chris, I was listening to you tell your dinosaur story, which is incredibly cute, by the way. And I was thinking, really what we're talking about here for the most part is that whole idea of relationship building and how valuable it is as a leader. Because if building relationships, were easy, you wouldn't have any employee turnover. But yet, people, there's an incredible amount of employee turnover in most organizations. And, it also transfers over, to life. I mean, the divorce rate in this country is well over 50%. Mm-hmm. And it seems to be climbing. And so, people will say, well, we're pretty good at relationships. Are you? You may want to take a deep dive on that. How do you treat your customers? I know a lot of companies that'll say, man, our customers are number one. And then try to call that organization. It may take you 30 minutes to get a live person, And so relationship building, I think, is a big skill that people need to sit back and take a look at and not be afraid to call them their own selves out. Because honestly, it's a work in progress for all of us, but an important one at that.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing that I feel like we're missing out on, that's, again, going back to this dinosaur story, man, this applies way more than I ever thought it would.
Oh my goodness.
I feel like I'm going to have to watch it again. But, it does. It just, sometimes we get so locked into, well, and this actually happened in the movie where the good dinosaur, even though that's a whole nother movie, and I think it's also on Disney, was, trying to question this leader, like, why are you doing it this way? Why would this happen? And one of the other quote unquote leaders of the group comes over to us and says, hey, don't question him. He's the boss. He's in charge. It's always been this way. He's earned it, this and that. And unfortunately, that also happens in so many instances in our world, even as, it's not just, when I say bosses, I'm not just talking, leaders in an organization. We do it as parents too. We do it as neighbors. We've done it in our churches where, it's, well, they're the boss, they're in charge, they know best. And I got to be honest with you, my own daughter, who just turned 6, corrected me one time and I broke my own rule. And it's number 2. It's week number 2 of this segment. Leaders are skilled, is leaders are listeners. And I didn't listen to her. And the sad thing is, luckily enough, it wasn't an emergency or anything. She was right. And I had to eat some humble pie. Yeah. So, sweetheart, daddy was wrong. I'm sorry. Let's fix this. And so, but those are skills that have to be learned, because too many times, whether it's in parenting or in an organization or anywhere else, where it's, well, it doesn't matter because I'm the boss, I'm in charge, this is how it goes. And the next thing you know, You have accidents, you have problems, you have people not being trained, you have people who are upset, you have messages that get mixed or missed, and now respect is lost, and then your responsibilities become skewed because not everybody knows what to do, and then the liabilities go through the roof, and now we're just missing the boat on so many things. And these are simple skills. Simple skills. Yet somehow, some way, we can tend to miss the boat. And so, it's just one of those things that as we go through this list, some of these are just absolutes as a leader you've got to have. It doesn't mean you're not going to mess them up. Just admitted some of my own. Mike's admitted some of his own. I know if Jim were on, he's brought up some of his own, even in the last segment, we were talking about being servant leaders. But leadership, as a skill is something that must be continually trained and developed on. This is a part of my training and development. We talked about this when we first kicked off this show, when we spent a month talking about training and development. I put my hands together, if you're not seeing the video, on purpose, because training and development has to go hand in hand. You're not going to train on something once and have it perfectly down. You have to continually develop on it, even if it's something that you feel like is just one of your greatest absolute attributes and skills. You still got to work on it. Yeah. Some of the greatest speakers out there still have speaking coaches. The greatest runners, the greatest athletes still have coaches, still look to, how do I improve my skills? Leadership is no different. How do I improve my skills? How do I speak better? How do I guide better? How do I strengthen better? How do I make you better? And it's a skill. And it's not just something we're born with. It's something, it may be, some of these may be skill. Like, I've always been considered a pretty good communicator. I'm not saying it's always been my best attribute. And I'd say it was something I was fairly well born with. But if you think for a second, I don't have to keep working on it, you got another thing coming. Listening, not the best thing I feel like I was born with. I've had to get better, and it's a skill I've had to work on, absolutely work on. So there are things that we're all going to have to work on and be honest and open with and communicate about. And the best way to do it, ask for feedback. Gather the intelligence. Those that you serve, ask them, do you feel like I'm doing a good job? Do you feel like I'm answering the problems that are brought? Do you feel like I'm working effectively? How can I be better? How can I serve you better? That's not being weak. That's actually being strong. And if it's something that's just a repeatable thing, better get some coaching and some help.
Yeah.
And that can come from guys like myself, guys like Mike and Jim, if you were on. But just have that ability to say, hey, I need help. This is a skill. I know I learned it. I remember working on it a long time ago. You were the one that taught that class or taught that course, or I remember maybe you were with somebody that taught that class or taught that course, and we're able to do better at it. And so, Mike, just thinking about this fact, this main category that has actually the most descriptors in it for leaders are, by the way.
Yeah, I would think.
There's a lot. There's a lot, and I may not have all of them. These are the ones I came up with. And we're going to discuss what are your final thoughts on leaders are as a main category skilled, and what are some of the bridges we need to gap in making sure that we're constantly honing and sharpening those skills.
Well, I think it's important to have some kind of an evaluation that you do, and go ahead and take a hard look in the mirror and determine, what do you think your strengths and weaknesses are? Because I do think it's interesting, Chris. When it comes to the coaching arena, I mean, somebody will take a cooking class and learn how to cook. You'll go to work with a golf coach and learn how to hit a golf ball. You'll take singing lessons. The list of things that you'll do before you work on yourself, quite honestly. And by self, I mean your life and the skills that we're going to talk about. The other list is pretty long. Sometimes it feels like this list is pretty short, and it's the most important list. Why? It goes back to what I was talking about a minute ago in relationship building, because you're not going to have great relationships. You're not going to have, as I talked about in the very beginning, you're not going to have the trust of everybody around you if you're not working on your skills. So it's important. And, you'll never be 100% of the way there. That's the good news. You always have something to work on.
Yeah, and that's so important. It's just it's a continual process, and again, you're gonna mess up. You're gonna make mistakes. Dust yourself off. Keep moving forward. If you need to apologize, apologize, and then work on that skill. Fix it.
Yeah.
Not that hard. If you need help, or if it is just something that's like, man, I'm just not the strongest at doing X, Y, Z. Find someone who is, so you can keep doing A, B, C, or any of the letters in between. Okay, whatever they are. But just make sure that the job is effectively being done. And if it's not your best moment, own it, and move on. So that said, Mike, I think this is a good wrap up point of just remembering to stay consistent in the training and development process when it comes to being a skilled leader or having skills to utilize and share with others. So, Mike, how can we get a hold of you? How do we keep moving forward with you?
Yeah. Consistent training is those are the winners. You show me a winner and I'll show you somebody who's consistently working on development. Yes. Drop me an email at mike@truemanlifecoaching.com. You can go out to my website at truemanlifecoaching.com and you will find my podcast, the True Man Podcast, and many other things. So yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me.
Awesome. And I have to say, Mike helps me improve on a regular basis, and we communicate quite often with one another. And my point to that is next week to kick off our first topic is leaders are and skilled communicators. Big topic.
Yeah, I liked it.
A lot of fun with that one. So you can reach me. I love talking all things leadership, love having discussions and chats on it. You can reach me, Chris Tice, Chris at eaglefireEnrichment.com. That's Eagle Fire Enrichment, your leadership solutions company. And unfortunately, Jim T. Chong couldn't be with us, but if you go to zoomturtle.com, you can catch up with everything he's doing. He is our other co-host, and hopefully he'll be able to jump back in next week. But until next week, have your best day ever by making everything great. Remember, you can't never did. God bless us all.
Yeah, make it your best day ever. Take care.